as you can see, the plaster is loose.
That was a new project for me for 2021, but first let's look back over 2020 and see where I've been, like the Devatashka Caves.
These caves are really eerie. They're full of breeding bats. That wasn't me swearing.
These caves are where the film Expendables 2 was filmed, and so the footage you're looking at is partly from that film and partly my own footage. You can tell mine because the caves are empty when I did it.
You're gonna need a new plane.
Moving on to Varna, where I was plagued by seagulls.
Jeez.
And that was the hotel where I was the only one staying there, and yet they still made me a decent breakfast. Most of my time in Bulgaria is spent socializing in the village of Oresh, which is just outside Svishtov, and staying in a hotel in Svishtov until I can get my own place. And I'm very pleased that I can get a cup of coffee at any time of day or night, and a few other things as well from the vending machines around the town centre. Problem is I can't understand what it tells me on most of the machines, but I did actually find one that was screen operated and you could switch over to English. Nice to know what kind of coffee I'm ordering. So this is Varna on the Black Sea coast, and I'm on the hidden beach. Varna's the place that I fly in and out of with Wizz Air, so I do spend a few days there on every trip, but always end up in Svishtov, like on this Sunday when I went to the market. So to sum up, I spend a lot of time in Svishtov, where I stay overnight and do a lot of eating and drinking. I go into Oresh, the village nearby, and this time I've found a house that suits me. It's only one bedroom. And then I go back to the coast again.
Anyway, we're going to have a look around Varna today, and I've already been and looked around some of the beach areas, and there's all sorts of relics of the war, I would say.
It's not cheap to live on the coast, so I'm still looking at the village of Oresh as a place to settle, and I keep an eye on the developments there. There's a first floor restaurant that hasn't been in use for years. They're now starting to redevelop that and try and bring it back into use. A new playground was built, a nice leisure area for the kids and their parents. And the Heritage Centre has been completely restored and looks much better these days, particularly with its fountain in front. I haven't actually seen it working yet, but I'm sure that happens.
Demolishing this and rebuilding it requires planning permission, and I just want to fairly quickly get a base here in Bulgaria, and particularly in Oresh. So a house that I've already shown you that was up for sale, I have put a deposit on it.
Another taster, but I'm not going to show you that house yet. The inside of this one is of more interest at the moment. It's a development we've been following through 2020 from the start of when the floors were put down and a new bathroom was built at the back, right through to the double glazing going in, some wiring and a lot of plastering, including the bricking up of an archway between two rooms. We just saw that finally being plastered before we were banned from travelling and haven't been back since. But Davey has been sending us pictures of how the development's going. My coverage of these little village houses has got a lot of interest on YouTube, and I'm pleased to say that people tell me of their experiences too. And one guy called Michael told me he bought a house in a village called Bulgarsko-Slivovo. He hadn't actually been to do the work on it, and of course the plans to go there in the summer were thwarted by the virus. But I did go and have a look in the village anyway to see what sort of a community it was. Bulgarsko isn't that far out of Svishtov either, and of course Svishtov is the place sat on the river Danube, and I prefer to go up on the hilltop to look down over the river, which is in fact how we discovered the human sundial. But there are other things up there, including some ruins, a quaint little church, and some nice socially distanced seats where you can sit and look over the river. A quick flick through some of the other places we've taken you to during this year. There's a hotel on the seafront at Varna that we showed you inside, a nice suite of rooms, and a view overlooking the Black Sea and the outdoor swimming pool. The beach there has got some quite interesting bars. We went to a village called Mihalsi near Pavlikeni, where an old colleague of ours has settled, made his home. And in Svishtov, we needed a hand to find a sandwich bar. We found a hand, we found the sandwich bar. You buy from a window in the front of the shop, and then they've provided seats for you to sit and eat. And while Davey was organising a roof to go on the development in Oresh, we were back in Varna and having a look around the town centre one evening to see if we could find some traditional Bulgarian places to eat. And while we were enjoying ourselves eating out in Varna, Davey was still sending us pictures through of how the house was going in Oresh. The bathroom was getting tiled, the hot water was in, some sanitary ware, and they were knocking through to the main house. It's worth mentioning that most of our trips to Bulgaria are in the autumn and winter, and yet we've been lucky with the weather, and this visit to Varna Zoo Park, which we didn't air till later in the year, was actually filmed in February, and look at those clear blue skies. I showed you this house of Colin's near Veliko Tarnovo, which he's put up for sale, and unfortunately he hasn't been able to get there with the keys to give to the agent because there's been a couple of people interested and he can't move on this one at the moment. Unfortunately then we don't have any up-to-date pictures of this house, but I'm sure it's still much as it was, and definitely is going to still have these views out to the valley and the hills. This barbecue at the house was filmed a few years ago in May, and it was a splendid evening with all the neighbours from the district bringing their local produce in. Back in Svistov, and in the last 12 months I've become quite attached to this pub, the Trumpet, because it was right opposite the hotel I was staying in. We visited the Schumann district, home of the Shumensko brewery, where they also make Carlsberg. They have a lot of wildlife in the woods around here, including their very own bear. We stayed at this hotel in the Schumann area and were a little disappointed because we couldn't use the balcony. We were charged full price for our room, and the hotel was undergoing a programme of work, so there were people everywhere, including on our balcony when we woke up in the morning. Although we don't go to Bulgaria in the summer, Davey, who lives in Oresh, sends us pictures back, first of his fire, which seems to happen regularly in the summer, and also he sends us pictures of the 2 bungalows that he's been working on for the 2 ladies from South Wales. Back to that later, but let's have a look at the map, see where Oresh is in relation to Svistov, and then see a place called Dekov. Well, Colin, my friend, bought a house there, and he still has it, and he doesn't know what to do with it, so if anyone's interested in doing that up, and you like the look of where Dekov is, let me know. Another person who'd been watching my YouTube videos of Bulgaria sent me details of a house he's selling on a couple of acres of land at Dabrovino, which isn't that far from Varna, so if you want somewhere near the coast, this could be the one for you. I was well impressed with this property. Well impressed, get it? And I was actually quite impressed because the village looks nice and it's near the coast. Moving on, the 2 bungalows in Bulgaria are now one big property, and the roof is on in between the 2. There's work going on the front patio now. This is the bit that's got the amazing views over the area. And finally, the house I put a deposit on in Oresh, little 1-bedroom place that I'm hoping to start work on next year. Sorry about the wind noise.
This is a small house I showed you a few months ago. It's the one I put a deposit on, and I'm now going to have to work out what needs doing to it. It's got an old outbuilding at the back there, and that really isn't usable anymore. No sign of a septic tank or anything, which is what you'd normally find on these kind of properties. No sign there's even been a hole in the ground that you could use for a loo, so we're probably going to have to put in a new septic pit as one of the first things we do. There is some plumbing in the house and there's wiring, but it's probably not very up to date. We're looking at this on a rather windy day up here. We're, like every other house in Oresh that I've looked at, fairly elevated. It's starting to rain, so very quickly what I'm planning to do is these 2 rooms, which are currently inside of the living room and kitchen, knock them together, knock down the wall, which is probably falling down already by the look of it, and put a raised patio up here and a patio door in that wall there. So that gives us a view out across the land, which we think is ours because there's no other access to this plot. So if it was somebody else's land here, I think that would be the case. So you've got a bungalow that seems very high because there's a small cellar underneath, and inside there's some structural work to do, quite a lot actually, so we're going to get out the wind and go and have a look at that. Okay, this is the part of the house that faces onto the road. That's the boulevard, it's called, Maritsa Boulevard. We've got the views across the hills like you have with most of the properties. That's one of the things you buy for. And here, this is the front entrance to this house. So inside, the actual rooms have got proper flooring, these proper floorboards in, but in the hallway it's a different matter, so we'll come to that in a minute. The wall here is the one I want to knock down because this is the kitchen, and I'm only calling it a kitchen because it actually has a sink over there. And as you can see, the plaster is loose, but the wall behind it's okay. So there's a lot of cracked plaster here. I only did that for effect. That's the sort of thing they do on Homes Under the Hammer. They poke things. The other thing that we need to be concerned about is the concrete floor, the parts of the floor that are concrete, which will be this kitchen area where the sink is, and in the hall where the concrete is all cracking. I don't think there's a big structural reason for this, but obviously we're going to have to take this up to find out. So that's one of the jobs. So that's all I'm going to tell you about this for now. I've already told you from the outside that the windows in these two rooms, which I'm knocking together, will go. We'll put patio doors out to the property's plot, and then the hall I will get rid of. I won't bother you with that for now because we've got months ahead of us, and I can tell you more about it as time goes on. But I don't see the point in having a little square hall, so I'm thinking of knocking all this through. Just don't know about the structure of the place yet. That's my plan.